Hello, it's me, Cori, and this is a Think for a Change video, but I am being accompanied by some fellow philosopher friends. This is Danielle, Oz, and Jose, and we are currently located in Atlanta. We are attending the Advancing Public Philosophy Conference, where a lot of publicly engaged philosophers get together and talk about their practices and things that they do that are really important and meaningful for everyone who's not a philosopher. So for this video, I was thinking it'd be fun to talk with these other inspirational folks about why they do philosophy, what philosophy has done for them, and just share some of their experience of being a philosopher. So Danielle?
Okay, so I teach philosophy at a school that's sort of a high school, college hybrid place. And I've been teaching for a long time, and one thing that I always do the first day of class is I ask my students to ask me any question that they want, anonymously. And they always ask me, why do you teach philosophy? Mm-hmm. And I tell them that it's because it changed me. Mm-hmm. It totally transformed my life. When I came into college, I took an ethics course as one of my very first seminars, and it literally transformed me. I felt like I was waking up from a dream, or coming out of from underwater. Mm-hmm. And I started realizing that so many of the questions that I had, I was literally asking myself, well, what do I think about abortion? And literally turning to the index of my Bible and just going to the verse that told me what to think. Or I would go to my parents and say, well, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And my dad would tell me one thing. I'm like, all right, that's how I'll vote. And I literally did those things. And then I took this class, and I realized that I hadn't actually ever thought about those things for myself. Mm-hmm. And when I started to, I realized I didn't really think all the things I thought. Mm-hmm. And it really, yeah.
That's a great phrase.
Yeah.
I didn't think the things I thought.
Yeah.
I always ask my students one of their strengths when we're getting to know one another, and one of my students this semester said I know what I think. And I was like, do you know what you think? or do you think what you think? Or do you think what you, do you think you know what you think?
Yeah, exactly.
But, actually, so Danielle, after that, how about the other two? Here's the thing about philosophy. We learn to ask questions, and these questions can get us to think about things in new ways that we hadn't really ever done before. But when I'm teaching, I am always met with the resistance from my students that are like, this philosophy stuff never gets us any answers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so we thought that we were going to be able to come in here and address hard issues like abortion or whatever it is, and then come up with an answer, but it doesn't help us at all because we don't get answers. So what's your experience with this quest for questions?
That's actually a big one for me, because that's a big one for me, and that's a horrible phrase to say loudly. No, I've encountered that resistance myself teaching, mm-hmm. and my sort of stock answer for it is, okay, how well do your answers work for you? Mm-hmm. How well do your answers work for you? How well does that person's answers work for them? And why is it that you guys have different answers, and you're just sort of banging heads with one another? I actually think that the learning to be comfortable with questioning, and learning to question yourself and take down your structures, and questioning the Bible. We all have those things that are our points of references, and that moment where that gets taken away is horribly alarming. That's good. I totally set that up. That's awesome. But one of the real payoffs of philosophy is recognizing how much more there is to the way things could be, mm-hmm. and learning how to be comfortable in the uncertainty and the instability, and because invariably that ground is going to slip away at some point. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can only hold fast to something unless you're one of those very lucky people that you just get through life without turmoil and trouble. And if you're one of those people, I hate you. But if you're not one of those people, you will face those moments of breakdown. Mm-hmm. And philosophy helps to sort of go with the waves of
not knowing.
Yeah, and I think part of that is having a sense of playfulness as well, right? that not having an answer doesn't have to be this melodramatic moment when you can approach philosophy and, I guess by extension, life with a little humor, with a little playfulness, with the sense of things, right? And I think that's something I take from you, right?
Maybe. Okay, sure.
Yeah, that you have this way of trying to not be set in a certain way, and that comes off as playfulness, and I think students really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right.
When you put in the work to let your personality show through instead of sort of a single monotone voice, then I think they're a little more comfortable with not having to have one single answer.
And I think it also teaches you humility, right?
Yeah.
You realize that like maybe you don't have all the answers, and maybe other people can teach you something, and maybe their point of view is worth considering, even if you don't end up accepting it, even if it's scary and destabilizing, and even if it makes you think that maybe you're wrong.
Yeah. This is interesting because I think that like some things that are going through my head as I'm listening to it is like, well, we've all heard the ignorance is bliss phrase, but then there's this other thing of like knowledge is really tenuous. That capital N knowledge is so tenuous. And then there's something about the melodrama of the existential crisis, or when you're finally confronted with something like, oh, it's not what I thought it was, then this can be really destructive. So hence, ignorance can be bliss if you don't ask questions. Then that's really pleasant. When you start to ask questions, you're asking too much, and it can get really scary, really risky. The whole ground can fall out from underneath of you, and that can be like devastating, or it can be really freeing depending on the experience. So it doesn't have to be a kind of debilitating paralysis that comes when you don't have anything to hold on to anymore. Instead, it can be really liberating, where now it opens up to playfulness, kind of golden laughter, if you will, one of my favorite influences. But then to even be like even more cheeky, it reminds me too of the Alan Watts video that I show my students, or I did last semester when we were talking about the good life. And he has that whole thing about like life is the music, right? And you don't go to a concert to hear the cymbals at the end. If we did, like that would just be it. No, the music, you go for the process and the journey. So it's like when you're playing, think of when you're a kid, you're not trying to like do a thing in particular, but you're exploring and you're building and you're like pretending and imagining, and it's this whole process. Then I don't know why we expect anything else from philosophy. And then Danielle, one other thing too about, I also think this is really important to mention, that what happens when we ask questions and don't need answers is that we can change the way that we embody philosophy, so we're not stuffy philosophers who have egos, who have answers, who become hyper-defensive, but then much more humble. And so this is a different image of a good philosopher, I think. Someone who can listen, which is a big thing that I have tried to talk about a lot, but thinking is like a kind of openness similar to how listening is. So maybe we can relate it back to the music too. Like, you've got to hear it, you've got to be with it and let it be the experience itself.
And just very quickly, yes, it does teach us humility, but it also teaches us strength, right? So the need for always having answers is kind of a way of saying, I don't have to be strong, or I can't be strong in the face of the world. And the ability to say, I can eschew simple answers, is to say, I'm strong enough to walk on my own 2 feet.
Yeah. And to not hide in the structures, or to just sort of fall into whatever's easy, or and to be flexible, right? Flexibility is a kind of strength too, that like you can go with the wave, you know, and ride it.
Or you can dance. I mean, it's, you know, you talk about hearing the tunes.
Dance if you want to. You can leave your friends behind.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna leave y'all behind. No, but like, you know, so when one person has one answer and another person has another answer, philosophy can help you tap into the tune that someone else is listening to. And you can see the beat that they're dancing to, or hear the beat that they're dancing to, and you don't have to dance to it yourself, but all of a sudden you start to see symphonies of beats and other ways to take that metaphor.
Yeah.
Symphony of dance. That's philosophy.
Well,
we should totally just dance at a panel tomorrow.
How about we just
dance
right now? Okay, let's go. We don't have any music, but we're dancing to philosophy because that's what we do.